What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my most anticipated games. So a few weeks ago, back in June, I made a video talking about the games I was excited for in the back half of 2025. This video, of course, is casting a slightly wider net in the sense that these are just very generally the games I'm looking forward to the most, regardless of said release date. Though, probably worth a mention, I was kind of considering what, some sorts of cutoffs were, and in this case, it is at least games we have actually not only got announced, but also gotten some proper information about. So we know The Elder Scrolls 6 is coming, it's being actively worked on right now, but realistically, we know nothing about that game, and so it's hard to say whether I'm genuinely excited about it, but obviously I'll play it when it releases, one way or another. Otherwise, though, these are simply the games that have captured my interest the most thus far. Though, of course, as new information comes, this list will naturally change and update itself as I sort of keep a literal list of games I plan on reviewing and things that I plan on following and updating people on, etc. So this is, by its very nature, something that's kind of always in flux. Now let's get into it though, kicking it off first with The Expanse, Osiris Reborn. This was very recently announced and is being made by Owlcat Games, which if you've watched the channel much, I'm a big fan of. I've covered basically everything they do at this point. And this particular title is notable for two reasons. For starters, it's obviously in a new IP they haven't worked with before, but The Expanse itself is an established IP with a pretty sizable fan base, I would say. Meaning that they've got plenty of established lore and whatnot to actually pull from, but what's more than that, it's also a genre shift for Owlcat. They have pretty much done isometric CRPGs up to this point, and trying to do something a little more Mass Effect-ish in nature will be an interesting bridge for them, and I'm very curious to see how they manage to land that particular transition, especially given that we know they want to start branching out in different directions. That said, everything that I've heard about this so far, including asking some questions via an interview myself, definitely has it looking pretty good. It's also a big step up just in production quality alone, as things like both the cinematic trailer on top of things like the gameplay we've seen are clearly a big step up for them. And that's before even talking about the game actually having full voice acting this time around. And so I think if they manage to nail all the details, which hopefully they will, this has all the potential to be an extremely big hit for them. And obviously, I'm excited to see how that goes. But our next entry is actually Clockwork Revolution from In Exile Entertainment. Also excited for this one for a variety of reasons. For starters, I loved their most recent work besides this, which was Wasteland 3. That is a really, really fun CRPG to sink your teeth into for a while. And Clockwork Revolution looks to be really, really interesting, especially after its most recent gameplay showcase via all the announcement shows we've had a few weeks past, giving us access to information about things like some of the backgrounds and attributes and everything they have planned, making clear that it is in fact a full-blown RPG set in a sort of dystopian steampunk-esque city that we'll actually be manipulating via time and whatnot, which will alter things. So it's bound to be an exciting adventure at the very least, though I am curious how well this time mechanic gets implemented, because I have seen the occasional time mechanic handled really well. Other times, though, it can complicate things unnecessarily, and I'm also excited to see how that specifically interacts with all of these more RPG-esque elements here. So it'll be really fun to check that out, and given that we are unlikely to get a sequel to Arcanum anytime soon, I'm hoping then that this can scratch that particular itch, as it seems to share a lot in common with what that game had going on. So plenty of reasons to be excited for Clockwork Revolution. For example, it seems pretty funny on top of all of that, which I'm always game for. Our third entry, however, is actually Warhammer 40k Dark Heresy, a game that was also recently announced and being developed by none other than Owlcat Games as well, continuing their tradition of course, making isometric CRPGs, and it is certainly no coincidence that they announced this before the ultimate announcement of The Expanse, Osiris Reborn, basically to reaffirm that they will in fact continue making isometric CRPGs that will hopefully continue to be successful. Now, obviously, any CRPG from Owlcat is going to have my attention at this point, given how much I've covered all of them. In the case of Dark Heresy, I actually think the fact that Rogue Trader continues to improve so much every time it gets a DLC is looking real positive for Dark Heresy, and this is because I think they had the opportunity to learn a bit about the setting in terms of how they work with it, mind you, and how a lot of the mechanics and their implementation of the particular rule set they're using here, which Dark Heresy also uses a great deal of, will give them the opportunity to sort of hit the ground running with Dark Heresy despite the differences in, of course, setting, narrative, etc. And I think that will give them the opportunity then to potentially really hit this one out of the park. But even just from the initial details we've received about things like some of the companions, including a Kroot as an example, the fact that we'll be performing some level of investigation for the Inquisition and presumably some path of going full heretic as well. And while all of that is bound to be interesting, again, a CRPG from Owlcat is really all it takes for me at this point. Moving along, though, with our fourth entry being a fitting examination of The Witcher 4. So, like a great many people, I'm a big fan of the Witcher franchise, played the original one in video game form, of course, all the way back in high school. Really loved the second one, got all 16 endings because I couldn't stop playing it. And then, of course, 3 was just a massive game with a lot going for it. Now, unfortunately, CDPR, of course, had the disastrous launch of Cyberpunk 2077, but even given enough time, they managed to turn that around, which was an impressive commitment, and honestly probably just simply aimed at restoring their lost reputation, but nonetheless had the added benefit, of course, of actually making that game pretty good. Which has me hoping basically two things for The Witcher 4. For starters, that CDPR learned their lessons the hard way and can actually commit fully to this game and making it as good as it can possibly be, given both their prior work with the IP already being really stellar, and having thus experienced firsthand what happens when you release a game that is largely unfinished, I guess you could say. The other half, of course, being that I'm hoping for a compelling story told in the franchise of the established Witcher series, especially given that the protagonist will actually be Ciri and everything. And I think there's plenty of places they could potentially improve here, like making the combat itself more compelling, making some of the quests more compelling as an example, as a lot of them do kind of have a very similar structure in The Witcher 3 as an example, and if they're going that open world route again, which presumably they will be given its success, I hope that in addition to just having really compelling narratives, they also manage to mix up the gameplay a little more than they did in The Witcher 3 as an example. On top of the already really strong base they have with like prepping for fights and learning about various monsters and stuff. So they have a lot of potential here, and I'm hoping they manage to execute upon it well enough to actually justify this being on this list. That does bring us to our final entry, however, and this is none other than the upcoming tactics title Star Wars Zero Company. So a lot of reasons to get excited here, mostly because I really enjoy a good tactics title, but also Zero Company is actually going to allow you to create an avatar that is supposed to be pretty open in terms of like race and everything, so potentially actually having a unique OC, so to speak, in the setting that is Star Wars on top of hopefully a really compelling experience via these tactical battles. And again, I kind of like the genre to begin with, of course, so that will hopefully be easy enough. I think they could really be onto something here. In fact, just the reaction to the announcements and stuff for this game has already been really positive, and I think for great reason. Getting something even close to the greatness of things like XCOM as an example, but also in a Star Wars series, makes for a lot of potential sense. Now, I do think this one in particular is probably quite a ways off, given that what they've shown thus far seems to be very early in development. Nonetheless, though, already looking promising. Don't have too much more to say on this one at the moment, but I will definitely, of course, be keeping people updated on it. That is pretty much going to do it for this particular video. Just kind of wanted to go over the things that I was personally the most excited for, because I spend so much time covering so many games. Sometimes it might get a little lost on people what I am actually excited for and looking forward to the most on my end. So with any luck, this video has alleviated that concern for you, but otherwise, that's pretty much all I've got for you today. So certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, or you're looking forward to my reviews of any of these games, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.